Bonjour Andorians. I've decided maybe that's what fans of Andor are called, maybe, or Andoriacs. I don't know. But we need to find a name for fans of the show because it feels like it's developing fans pretty damn quickly. So we're back here again to discuss the latest episode of Andor. Jack filling in for Mike, of course, doing my best as his Padawan, but brilliantly joining me again for this episode to cap off this 3-episode arc. And backed by popular demand is Maff. How are you doing, mate?
Not too bad. I'm not sure about popular demand. We'll have to see about that.
The feedback
happy to be here.
Not at all. The feedback from your episode was very positive.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's always a bit nerve-wracking, but I really enjoyed it. I'm glad to be back again.
And I think, to be fair, we've both got imposter syndrome when it comes to living up to the shoes we're filling. For me as a host, and I know you were saying you feel that way. You know, we both listened to Mike and Dave from last week, but you know they're elite, right? Mike is the Star Wars man within our community. Dave is the Podfather. I mean, we are not even going to bother trying to compete with those guys. No. We're just going to come on and we're going to be ourselves, and we're going to sound knowledgeable and opinionated. That's all we need.
We're going to try, and we've always got Google. So.
That's definitely true. And much like yourself, as we briefly just spoke about, you have to do a little bit of Googling in between.
It makes us sound a little bit more knowledgeable. It
does, yeah. I mean, as you said, character names. This time there was a bit less Easter egg hunting. I felt like I had to do. I knew in that episode 4, particularly when we saw Luthen Rael's showroom with all the ornaments and all the kind of historical artifacts he had, I knew I was going to have to do a little bit with that. And we didn't delve into it too much, actually. Mike had sent me a Discord, which I forgot to read out, message where he'd broken a lot of that down for me. I think we got so wrapped up talking about all the things we liked. But here it was much more straightforward. It was much more of a driven plot where, like, we've got something to say, we've got something to do, and we're not worrying too much about the Star Wars lore this time.
Yeah, I think they seem to know where they want to go. And they seem to they may do a bit of fan service, but I haven't felt that they've wanted to do that as much and pushed it. I don't feel they have to be fair. If they tell the story, what people want to hear, they don't need to do fan service.
No.
And if anything, they can do fan service, and if they do it wrong, they're going to get slated. So in one sense, just tell a good story, which I think they're doing. I have a couple of criticisms about last night's episode, and that. But all in all, it was a good tie-off for the 6th episode because as you said before, they seem to be doing them in 3-episode arcs, and it felt like it did tie that bit of the story up.
100%. I mean, I got that from Mike, to be fair, so I won't claim. And actually, reading after this episode, it sounds like the structure might change up a little bit. As you said, doing your own research, you noticed that the next 6 seem to be a bit more solid in terms of the creators, because we know they've come in, like, not only of the episodes come in batches of 3s, but the creative come in batches of 3s. So for this series, it was Dan Gilroy, wasn't it? Being the chief writer of the episodes, which was Tony Gilroy's brother, who was the showrunner, and it was Susanna White directing them. So Dan Gilroy and Susanna White controlled these 3. Moving forwards, I think from what I read, it might be the next episode maybe stand alone, and then the back 5 are all interconnected, which I think would make sense because we can feel some things around Andor building now, can't we?
I think if the next, I'll just say now, the criticism I had is that the episode was brilliant until the end. I felt it tied up, and then it wanted to go on to the next episode to kind of set it up, and I don't feel it did.
Sure.
I feel it showed Mon Mothma and the big, like...
It's like the Senate Council, isn't it?
Yeah, the Senate Council. And obviously we saw Luthen as well. But it felt as if there should have been something more just to kind of get us on to the next episode. And that the story itself that it did tied up well. But again, with Andor at the end of it, and again, we're going to bounce around all over.
We're talking about the end 5 minutes in. But...
Why do it in order? If you want it in order, go watch it.
Sure.
But it kind of tied up with Andor, but then we don't know what's happened to him now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, so it'd be interesting if maybe what they do is in the next episode, they kind of try do a bit more world building and then bring Andor into it. Then, I think that's going to be quite good. But yeah, that's the only criticism. I kind of got to the end of it and I was so pumped with what had happened, and then I felt a bit of a letdown at the end of kind of where we're going to go next, because they've done the job. Yeah,
they have done the job. It did feel very much like, and we'll talk predictions at the end as we do sometimes. I think, yeah, the scene with Mon Mothma and the scene with the ISB and the scene with Luthen all did feel very much almost kind of like the standard, Return of the King criticism of like, here's an ending and here's an ending and here's an ending. But you're right, they were very much about like, see you next time on Andor.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite have the catch of Luthen and Cassian leaving in the ship today to go off on their mission. It didn't quite have that catch of that end of the first 3 episodes of that first arc.
No. It, as I say, like you just said, it had an ending, and then it kind of did something else, and it felt as if it didn't know how to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe if they'd have finished where Cassian had gone and then kind of ended it there, that might probably work better in my opinion. But having said that, I'm not being asked to come and direct these stuff, so what do I know?
No, I mean, I didn't feel it when I watched it, but I hear what you're saying. I think the Luthen one was earned, wasn't it? It was nice to see him have his moment, because he's been sitting there tense for days now. Was it 3 days since he dropped Cassian off? So I think that one was earned. But I hear what you're saying about particularly the Mon Mothma one.
I think he even says, doesn't he, that he thinks he made a mistake with hiring Cassian, and obviously, again, Stellan Skarsgård is a brilliant actor, and you can just see that, you feel that relief from him, and it's just an expression. It's just his mannerisms. It's just he's fantastic in the role, even though we only saw him for couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And that, but again, it's sells his part.
It is, and because he's playing two parts, really, isn't he? He's playing Luthen, who's the real guy, who is the rebellion, not leader, I suppose, but he's one of the key figures at this point in the early rebellion. And you've got him as the flamboyant antiquities shop owner. So he's playing those two parts, and you do see that again, don't you, in this chapter when he goes into the back room, his physical, his performance and his physicality changes.
Yeah.
And then he laughs, and it's vocal tone, it's everything, isn't it? It's awesome.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about the end. Should we go back to the start?
Idea. Otherwise, it's a short episode.
Yeah. The fact that Luther is celebrating does tell you partly, obviously, where this episode goes. But I think we all knew what was going to happen in this episode before it aired. And actually, that doesn't really affect the enjoyment of it, I don't think. We kind of presumed we know Andor would get away, but we presumed he would get away with the money.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be the start of the funding for rebellion. But we also presumed a lot of people would die. And of course, both those things came to pass. So this episode is called The Eye. And it's the episode 6, halfway point of this season, quarter of the way through the show completely. But it's the next end point of this kind of 3-episode arc structure, isn't it? And in this episode, we get to see what's been building up for 2 episodes previous on Aldhani. We get to see the heist of the Imperial credits from the dam base. I'm not sure what the actual base is called, but the Aldhani dam base, which is a beautiful looking effect on the screen, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I don't know whether it's hard to tell. Sometimes you can tell with blue screen and that, with the land and that, but it was hard to tell. That base does look very real, and I do assume it probably is blue screened, and I don't think they'd sit there and build a completely new structure. But that's the thing, you've got that, because I think all that's filmed in Scotland. You see the landscape, but you can see that futuristic structure as part of the. As part of the land, to be fair, it doesn't feel out of place to a certain degree, which it should do, but it doesn't. They've done a very good job there.
Yeah, that's true. I think there are other times where there's a really stark difference between the Imperial and Coruscant, actually, at times, and also obviously the Aldani people. And I think we see that when the kind of nomadic Aldani, what are they called? They're called like the Darnies, I think they just call them, don't they?
The
like the nomadic Darnies turn up for their like celebration for when the ice storm passes over. I think the costume design for those characters and the actors they cast, kind of like this craggy old man in the lead. And I've heard a couple of people, Mike and Dave last week included, sort of making that kind of HBO-y Game of Thrones comparison. This feels like a long form storytelling. This feels like kind of literary storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And the casting of these people fits into that mold too, doesn't it? They're cast for the role, not because they're good looking actors. I don't mean that disparaging. I don't mean that rudely, but they're cast to be like, craggy old man on Aldani. He looks like he's weather beaten and he's walked for a long way.
I mean, if this had been a film, these few episodes would have been probably done in 20 minutes, and that. But we've had nearly 6 hours now,
mm-hmm.
and although you could kind of argue, is it a drawn-out scene of them coming down the mountain, coming to the Eye, coming to the Jedi Temple? But it works. It feels that it needs to breathe, and it needs to show all that. It needs to show that, the checkpoints that they go through, and that, which obviously plays into the story, because then, the team is able to kind of join in there.
Mm.
But again, it's our world building, and it doesn't feel like it's rushing. It doesn't feel it needs to rush. I think we said at the start on the previous episode that, there's 12 episodes for this season and another 12 in there. And you kind of think, how are they going to fit all that in? Because, it's just one guy, but it feels like it's just learning to breathe itself into these episodes. And it's got me hooked. It really has. I think I've not felt this way about Star. I mean, Obi-Wan was brilliant, but there was quite a lot of Easter eggs in. But I haven't felt like this for Star Wars for a long time, and it has that feel of the original Star Wars, and again, that's the timeline it's meant to be in. But it's just, it doesn't feel like it has to rush itself.
Mm.
The story that they're telling, again, they could quite easily do this in 10, 20 minutes, but it's that more world building, which I'm sure we're going to get plenty more things other than Andor going forward, whether they're taken to, other things of overall that way, I'm not sure, but it feels as if they're branching out of the universe to a certain degree.
Mm.
And we're going to explore these different characters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think its sense of pace is spot on for me. I know some people grumbled about that first 3 episodes, and particularly the first 1 and 2 were slow. I didn't feel it at all. I think I said that when I was discussing those first 3 with Mike. And I think you saying it's allowing it to breathe is a lovely phrase. I think that's what this is doing. It's allowing moments to land. It's allowing characters to grow and to affect other people. I mean, obviously, Nemec is the main character we've probably met over the last 3 episodes, who is going to have the long-term biggest effect on Andor. Obviously, he leaves him his manifesto at the end of when he dies, which we'll talk about for sure. But as a character, his passion and his belief and his kind of youthful exuberance you could see it starting to rub off on Andor. Like, he was fighting back, but I think these are the moments which, as you said, in Rogue One, which is a great movie, we get a heist in Rogue One. We do get a heist. We get them stealing their Death Star plans, but it's that final third. We get a heist in Solo, which is that train heist, but it's over in about 10 minutes. And we don't get any character development in these moments. They're kind of, particularly in the Solo one, their action to move the plot forward and to have a cool moment. Whereas here we get a heist, which is basically a whole episode and has been spoken about for 2 episodes previous. As you said, it's really taking its time. A lovely comment to make about, seeing the Darnies coming over the hills and the mountains and through the valleys. It's important because this show is trying to say some things as well as be Star Wars and entertaining and have cool space battles, which this does. but it also has commentary on colonization and capitalism and fascist power and the grey that's in between all of that. So, and that's all there to be seen if you want to find it.
Yeah, which that's one of the good things. They're able to tell a story here and that, and add so many different things, but put it into a universe that people will, maybe not realise they're taking this information on board and that, but, when it's pointed out, you kind of go, you're right. That is kind of a bit of modern day life there. And again, like you say, in the previous Heist films for the, as I say, Solo and Rogue One, it's all kind of over and done with. This one, we only knew Nemec for 3 episodes, but, obviously his death really it meant so much to us. You can see it meant so much to Andor, but I think last week, I don't know if it was Dave or Mike, one of them mentioned that he reminds him of Mouse.
It was Dave, yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as Dave said it, I thought, yeah, it does. And again, Mouse is only in it for a short time in the Matrix, but you do kind of feel his death. And they've done this here, but I would say 10 times better. And even when he gets injured, he's still fighting till the end, that bit of acting once, again, all over the place here, but when they give him that adrenaline and he's sat up and he's like, climb, and you can just see that he's using every bit of his last life to kind of get them out of this, because, you can see in Andor's face that we're screwed here, unless someone tells me where to go. We're screwed, and again, it's that death, like you said, is going to probably have a lasting effect on him. And again, sorry to jump around, but something that happens at the end, which we'll get to, we've seen it already in Rogue One, and it's nice to see that Andor, where he's going to become, what he ends up doing with say his name,
Skeen.
Skeen, yes. There was a slight hesitant, and then it was like, this is how I deal with it.
Yeah.
And that in Rogue One, there wasn't a hesitant. He kind of assessed it and thought, I need to deal with this straight away, and that's what he did. You can see from episode 1, when he had to shoot the guard, to episode 6, where, again, in his opinion, he had to shoot Skeen because otherwise he would just screw everybody over. There was less of a hesitant. There was less. You can see that the cogs are moving now to where Andor is going to end up being.
Yeah, he's offended by what Skeen's suggesting. So Skeen wants to, when they escape. So the people who escape are Andor, Skeen, Nemec, who's badly injured, and Vel, isn't it? So they're on the ship to escape. We'll talk about Cinto as well in a minute when we talk about the characters that don't get off planet for whatever reason. So those 4 escape, but then they choose to take Nemec to be fixed, don't they? By Dr. Quadpaws, which I've seen a lot of people write about on the internet, which is a cool name, who looks a bit like Maz Kanata, but as I understand it, I'm sure Mike can come in next week and talk about it a bit more, is not the same race as Maz Kanata, but look the same because of the cool, like, glasses.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when they're on this planet, Skeen then offers to Cassian to split the money and run off, doesn't he? And you're right. I'm not sure there's even any hesitation from Cassian at all. Like, that gun is out. It is 100% Andor shot first.
Yeah. There's no, there's no going to be editing later on with does Andor shoot or not.
Yeah, no.
I do think Skeen was the one who mentioned, let's go to the doctor. So I do feel that he was already setting in motion to set this up. And the only reason he couldn't do it on his own is because he couldn't fly it.
Yeah.
So he has to, and because he believes that Andor is just a mercenary, gun for hire, he thought he could buy him. And that shows another part when Andor comes in to talk to Vel, and he says, I just want my money.
My cart that I've been promised, yeah.
He could have quite easily drove off with all that money, and he doesn't. So there is a moral compass there, and that, and again, they're not the good guys. I wouldn't say they're the bad guys, but they're not the good guys. They're working that grey in between.
They are, And what something earlier in the episode which really shows they're not, purist white hat good guys is holding a gun to a child's head, which Fel does. That's not the act of a good guy. Much like in that first React arc, blowing up a car bomb, which kills people deceptively, is not a good guy move. So you're absolutely right. There's lots of grey going on.
It's interesting you mentioned that. The gun scene to the child's head, that's a bit where I kind of felt the Empire, is it Colonel Pitag? He tries to save the child's life. And that. Now, the Empire is such a bad thing, but he's not. He didn't come across that way. He came very much kind of, look, and unfortunately he got killed for it. But it was nice to see there are good guys in there. And that there are good guys in the Empire. And that they're just, unfortunately, some of them, there's probably not many of them, and some of them just are scared and they follow suit. Like Commodore J-Hold, he's very much he's just about doing his job, getting up here and moving on to the next thing, making his life better.
I think those two sealed their fate there, didn't they? I think they were very clever in their writing here, because when we first see them on Aldani, they're in like the viewing gallery and they're looking over the valley, aren't they, where the event is going to take place, and they're having some sort of like drink. And the way they're talking about how they've wiped out the indigenous kind of culture, I think sealed both their fate. So in that scene, they're talking about like, oh yeah, there was thousands of them, then there was 500, and now there's 60. And yeah, isn't it great that we've managed to wipe out their belief system and their culture? I think as soon as they're talking about that, you kind of know, right, these guys are not going to make it, because that is obviously not okay. What is happening there?
It was clever how they did it though, because he was saying that they set up bars so that it sets off with thousands of people. They hit a bar and obviously lose a few people, and it was clever though. There wasn't wiping them out. There was giving them that carrot and a stick to go look at something else. So it was a clever way of doing it. And then they even said, look, has anyone told them this is going to be the last year they can do it? It's like, no, why would we tell them that? But there was an interesting thing that Lieutenant Gowan said to J-Hold, that you're not going to be able to win him over. You need to, he says that he was a mechanic, I think, or an engineer. So he's seen things like this. He's seen, things get destroyed and built up as war machines. You're not going to win him over as doing it this way. Which again, it plays into later on. The guy is just trying to do what's right for everybody, and that he's working under the Empire, but he's not a bad guy, and that he's just obviously been given opportunities. And he seemed genuinely concerned when he said, have you told them that they won't come up in? And J-Hole's like, oh no, we're not going to tell them that. And he seemed a bit like, oh, well, they should be allowed to do that. You kind of got that feel from him, from what I did anyway, from that point, which again leads into the bit where he tried to save the boy's life and that. But, it's nice that there is that grey from both sides that we've seen.
Absolutely.
Which is a lot better than just, you just see Jedis with lightsabers, they're the good guys. And Darth Vader is all in black with a red lightsaber. He must be the bad guy. but now we're seeing there's grey both sides, and that. So, which again, I think the storytelling is fantastic.
I thought the casting, because Behaz only comes in it. This J-Hole guy, J-Hole Behaz, the leader of this kind of unit here. He only comes into it in this episode, and he makes a really big impression. And some of the writing with him was fantastic, wasn't it? When he was there putting on his like imperial dress robes for the ceremony, and he couldn't get his belt done up. And that referencing of like, how fat and comfortable the Empire have got comes back. And then when his son is not able to get his own like dress robes on properly, and he's like, he's 12 or whatever he was saying, like he's 12, he could dress himself. And you're not seeing the irony here, mate. Like you literally cannot dress yourself 2 feet away, and you're having to go at your son. Yeah. So I thought, again, it's all in the writing. I think performances in this are excellent. We've spoken about kind of the location shooting and the cinematography, which I do want to come back to. There's some beautiful shots in this episode. All of that is fantastic. But I think the power of this show, and if it continues to be this good, is all going to come back to the writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's telling a story, and you know, the fact that it's got Star Wars behind it is fantastic. But this is something special. This is probably one of the best things I've seen on Disney. It really is.
Yeah, it'd be good anyway, even if it wasn't set in Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm more of a big Marvel fan than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I've enjoyed She-Hulk. I love Miss Marvel and that, but I think this is probably one of the best things that I've seen them do. And again, you're getting such a feel for the characters, you know, and just little things, you know, like we said about Luther, and just little things that he does, you kind of feel it with him, you know. That it showed in the episode where he was questioning whether he did the right thing sending Andor in there, and then at the end of the episode, you see that joy on his face that, you know, I did make the right decision. He did do the job. Obviously, he doesn't know really anything else, but, you know, he knows that something's happened. He knows there's been a break-in and that. And if anything, it's got them, you know, the Empire questioning what's actually happened. And he's going to, you know, cat amongst the pigeons kind of thing.
Perhaps not for the best, but that's definitely something we'll talk about with the ISB. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned like Skeen and his manipulations. That's a great shout, that idea of like he pretended he wanted Nemec to be saved, but really it was about him getting the next stage of his plan, which was landing so he could try and escape with Cassian. It started, that scene started making me question a lot about him, because a lot of the information Cassian's got has been through him. Mm-hmm. So things like Tamarin being an ex-stormtrooper came from a conversation they were having in the build-up to the heist earlier in this episode. Mm-hmm. Things like, and then Tamarin getting shot. He got shot during the heist when the Imperial troops come down. Did Skeen let him get shot? Because that's one less person to have to worry about. It started making me kind of retroactively think back to this episode, perhaps going back to earlier episodes and thinking about, like, has Skeen been scheming and lying? Has he been an unreliable narrator for Cassian this whole time?
It's interesting you say that, because that's one of the things I noticed when Tamarin kind of says, cover me. Because I think Tamarin goes to try
to help Vel out, doesn't he? Because she's pinned down.
There's a look on Skeen's face of him being scared, genuinely scared. Like, it reminds me of the kind of person who, you know, would go into a battle with his sword and just put his sword into dead bodies already and look like he's done something. You know, he looks like he's just playing it, and he's never seen battle. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Tamarin goes down, he gets shot. Skeen didn't seem to kind of give him any form of covering fire there.
No.
So, like you said, is it a case of, well, that's one less person I have to deal with now? Mm-hmm. You know, again, Nemec getting injured, which, you know, there's no way I don't think he could have planned that. But again, straight away, it's like, there's a doctor. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a doctor, he can come and save him, and that. So then they land down, and it's to set up this big plan, which didn't work out good for him, and that he got his just desserts. But again, it's that writing that they've done underlying, setting there's little stories, other little stories that are branching off that you don't realise until afterwards, when you, quite possibly, if I wasn't sat here doing a podcast about it, I may not have picked it up straight away. It's one of those things that until someone kind of mentions, oh, this is happening, you go, yeah, that's kind of leading to this, that's leading to that story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And as you just said there, that's the nature of good writing. That it's not, there's one character going on a journey and everyone else is there to support them. All these characters have their own little stories going on all the time. Cinta and Vel gets revealed in this episode that they're potentially in a relationship together, but not a big deal is made of it. It's just like, yeah, that's happening. And that's worth thinking about, because Vel leaves and Cinta doesn't. And they've known that moment has been coming the whole time they've been doing this plan and executing it, which makes sense why now Vel was hesitant earlier on and Cinta needed to be the one saying, no, like, come on, this is the plan. We've got to do it. So again, that moment has much more weight now, knowing later on that Vel, being the leader, has chosen to leave her romantic partner behind.
Yeah.
It's excellent writing.
Because it's mentioned in the first of this three that Cynthia's already got a partner.
She's already sharing her bunk or something, isn't it? Yeah.
They don't say who she's with. So you probably sat there thinking, oh, it's Tamman, oh, it's, it's clever writing. Again, it's set it up that, she's with someone, but then you don't think about it. They move on. And then it's just that little touch. I think the touch
touches her hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a case of, all right, okay, well, and then that leads back to when they're on the bridge. And it's like, you've got to call it now. You got to call it Vel. And she doesn't want it because she knows once she says yes, let's go, that she's going to have to leave. And again, it's all these things that are pulling on your heartstrings a little bit because you realise that there's so much more invested in this than what you first realise. And, I think it was a big thing that Cassian did in the last episode when he turned around and said, look, I'm a mercenary. I'm for hire. And that. But you could see, although he's for hire, he does kind of believe in what they're doing. And then it's when he's having a conversation with Nemec later on, and Nemec says, oh, I've already made my mind up about you. I wrote about you last night. You're this mercenary who's just here. And he says, you're half right. And that it never leads anymore. It doesn't lead on to saying, where he's right and where he's wrong as such. It just says you're half right. The Empire will screw you over, kind of thing. But again, it's we've got the advantage. We know where it leads to. We know where it's going to go to. But it's good to see him go on this journey. And again, all these different characters that he's meeting, who's going to grow him into the person that we see in Rogue One.
Yeah, agreed.
Which, I mean, I felt sad when he, at the end of Rogue One when he died, but even more so now. I think once this all finishes, I will go back and watch Rogue One again, and I think it will have a bigger impact on me.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I watched it a couple of weeks ago when they started because I thought, I've seen Rogue One, but I can't remember it that well. But, obviously we'd only had a couple of episodes at that point. I think once all this finishes, going back, Rogue One is going to hit home a lot harder than what it did. Because we've seen where he's come from.
Yeah, definitely. He'll almost be the main character in Rogue One now rather than Jim, won't he?
Yeah, quite possible.
I really enjoyed the Cinta and Vel mini arc to this episode because I wasn't sure what they were up to, because initially I wondered if they were going off because they disappear off from the team, don't they? We get the boys team and the girls team. The boys go off and they're going to pretend to be Imperial soldiers and they're going to brazenly walk into the facility, which I really like because that's what Andor did in order to get that unit from the first arc as well. So it's calling back to that. Lots of these lovely little tie-ins. Whereas Cinta and Vel going off, and I thought, are they going off to be sacrificial pawns? What are they up to? But what they get to do is basically be James Bond or Lara Croft, or they get all these really cool moments. They get to go underwater with a little scuba machine that helps them break into the dam. They get to, as you said, do a James Bond GoldenEye dam dive. I don't know what you call that when you're running down the side of a building. Cinta gets to jump in at the last moment. And I know you feel sad for that Imperial guy dying. I'll be honest, I don't care too much. Cinta comes in and blasts him away. So they get all the cool moments actually within this little arc.
Well, again, Cinta comes down at that point and she reacts to her party with a gun on him. And she's got a drop on him, so she's going to take that shot. She's been there for the last 5 or 6 months. They've invested so much into this. Her partner's up there. Oh, no, her partner was already down there, wasn't she?
No, I think Cinta comes down, then Vel follows her. They're coming down together, aren't they? Yeah.
But again, they want a second question. She just shot straight away. And that, which is good in one sense, because it shows that they mean business. And that, a very clever plan. Obviously, Lieutenant Gorm has really thought this through of how to get them all in, and just go down and see the eye, go down and see the eye, and again, it would have worked. I was never quite sure why they didn't cut off transmission to the
other other base.
Yeah, I didn't seem to make sense, and that unless it were a case of if they wasn't able to talk, then maybe they would have come and investigated.
Yeah, I guess they didn't mention, they didn't say, but that was my presumption too. Like if that part gets cut off, then immediately they send the ties over. Mm-hmm. So they needed that bit of extra time, didn't they, to make sure they were in the air before the ties arrived. But you're right. I don't know that for a fact. It was just my own assumption.
Yeah, which, I mean, it gives us a really cool moment of the docking station with all the TIE fighters and everything there. And, it was fantastic to see all that. And obviously then it makes it more of a chase. They haven't got 9 minutes anymore, which kind of goes back to the previous episodes when they says you've got 9 minutes to get out of here. And then the TIE fighters want me. And it's like, no, they're already here. Mm-hmm. But there's little plot points that I mean, they stole all the money, but there was still a big chunk of it left there. And I just thought, if you're leaving, why wouldn't you blow it? If you can only take obviously so much, but why didn't they have a contingency plan of, right, once we go and we steal this amount of gold, we blow the rest of it so that damages them even more? But again, it's just nitpicking.
Well, yeah, and also I guess like maybe they did, or maybe they plan on taking it all, but obviously they get interrupted, don't they, by the comms team coming down?
Yeah.
So who knows where that would have gone? What did you think about like how the show, like for that moment when they're piling up the credits, the gold, and we've got that comms team coming down, and I think earlier as well when they were kind of marching towards the entrance, how well did you think it created tension in those scenes?
You feel that, they're going to get through there, but I think because they're drawn out a little bit, again, to kind of, they're following the nomads up there, the Darwins, did we say they were?
The Darnies, I think they call them.
Darnies, yeah. It creates that more tension. It's not a case of, they're following up behind other, because you see, there's a bit when they join at the end, and there's another team, we're kind of giving them the eye of like, who are they?
Yeah.
And that, I think there was 3 of them that kind of giving them the looks of, we don't know who are these, what's going on. But then Lieutenant Gorm's like, oh, well, you guys stay down here, Team 3 is going to go up there. You guys get to see the eye. And everyone wants to see the eye. Everyone wants to see this light show, which, we'll get into later, but it's absolutely fantastic. But it's again, them drawn out points are needed. I think if they'd have just said, right, we'll do Andor, we'll do it as a film, I don't think it would have as much impact. I really don't. I think it would, like I've said, when I go watch Rogue One again, I will feel more for Andor, and probably it's more Andor's story there as well than we've seen this than what it is at the moment. And I think if this had just been a movie, it wouldn't do it justice.
It just, I just thought they played those scenes really well. Even, and we said it right at the top, even when you kind of know what's going to happen, that's a real skill to then still be able to draw, kind of any kind of emotion and tension out. It just had like kind of Inglourious Basterds vibes at time for me, with how Tarantino has managed to wring as much tension as possible. I mean, if they needed a different title than The Eye, which obviously fits, Inglourious Eldani would have been a perfect title for this episode, I think, as well.
Yeah. But I do think that the storytelling is, they're using it well. It's quiet where it needs to be quiet, and it's loud where it needs to be loud. And we said before, it's giving it a chance to breathe, and so that you feel in the story. And it is a heist, but there's so much more to this than just a heist.
It is. It's poignant as well too, isn't it? The intercutting of the heist, tense moments with the Darnies watching the start, and then the kind of as the show is going over, that was like fantastically done as well. And not only like starkly visually looks different because you've got this beautiful like rainbow light show outside in nature again, because we keep getting the good guys being linked to nature and the bad guys being linked to kind of technology and insight. But I think also you get that reminder of what the rebels are there for, don't you? That's what that scene's there for. Yeah. They're here for these kind of people who are being downtrodden, who are having their culture wiped out, and the people who are doing it thinking that's okay and laughing about it and cheersing over it. This is what the rebellion's about. It's about those people who can't fight for themselves or have lost their way and they need to be reminded. It's that little moment at the end of Last Jedi where Broom Boy moves the broom because he's been moved by the story he's heard about Luke sacrificing himself and winning a fight by being passive and by not fighting. It's that. I think that's what that moment was about for me. I thought it was really powerful.
It's choosing when to fight and choosing when not to fight, and it's the fact that 7 people went in there and took on a base. I think there were meant to be 40 troopers in there.
I think that's what they said, didn't they? Yeah,
or something, but this little band can actually show that you can stand up. We don't have to be bullied. We can kind of stand up for us and take back what we deserve. And I suppose it's only a little heist job, but what it's going to build into next, that's this whole rebellion. I know we're going to get on to at some point about predictions, but it's hard to see where they're going to, because there's so much more they can go from here. How this rebellion is going to build into, I think, we mentioned in the previous episode that we did was Diego Luna says it shouldn't be called Andor because he's the driving force. He's the person who's the catalyst who's going to take us through this. But it's about the universe. It's about the rebellion and how we're going to get there. And again, it's quite moving. It's quite. I suppose it's quite seeing how they're going to do this and that, and being able to kind of go on this journey with them, and that it harks back to them Star Wars days when the first ones came out, where you went along with Luke. You was with him as he was learning things and becoming this better Jedi. And I feel that they're doing that again. And that's why I think the prequels. There's a few good moments in them. I'm not a massive fan of them, but then the sequels, again, there's some good parts in there, but I do feel that they did a bit of that as fan service, and they could have done a better story with them both. This feels like something special. It really does. And I just hope they don't disappoint.
Yeah, don't build it up too much just in case.
Well, that's because we're halfway through.
Yeah, well, quarter of the way through, really, aren't we? Yeah.
Well, yeah, quarter of the way. And you just feel that it hopefully it can only get better, but how they top this, I don't know, because this really did feel some of this episode. And as I say, I'm grateful that I was able to come back on to do this one, because it really is one of the best things I've seen for a long time. And
seeing is one of the big parts of it, isn't it? We've waxed lyrical now about the writing and some of the performances, but the direction and the cinematography for this episode in particular, all of the stuff in Scotland's been beautiful to look at. But with the eye coming in this episode, it was something quite special, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was clever that they just showed us little glimpses every now and again. There was, one of the meteors went. I think what they said it was minerals that was hitting the atmosphere. I think they said something like that at one point. But you just see an occasional one every now and again, and even some of the guards. I mean, I think Nemec says at one point, it's like, oh wow, look at that. I think Andor looks a little bit cross with him because
he does, yeah.
And that, but you can see that this is something special. This is something that a lot of them haven't seen. And then as it went on, I mean, the bit when they do make the escape and that when they're flying through that, I mean, it did remind me a little bit of the Rainbow Road from Thor.
Sure. Or I was thinking Mario Kart actually, but yeah.
But it really was. It was just, you felt you was with them on that. It's a bit of, cinema that, well, not cinema, but TV, but it really felt it could be in the cinema. It really felt it could be one of them blockbuster things.
It did.
I don't know what money they've spent on this, but, it must be up there because, as I said, some of the shots, some of the cinematography is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely the standout scene, isn't it? With the ties chasing them, and then, as you said, Nemec like directing him, and that's one of the fan servicey bits, isn't it? With him saying "climb" is referencing back to KS-20 because that's the last word he says to Cassian before he deactivates and dies. So that's quite a nice moment. But yeah, that all of that scene was absolutely stunning, wasn't it? It actually made me think. You saying, kind of I can't think what that bridge is called in Thor, but I know what you mean.
It's the Rainbow Road, I think, is it?
Like I say, that's what I call that. That's what it's called in America.
Sat here going.
People will be shouting, but that's fine. It reminded me actually of, I don't know if you've seen the Wachowski Speed Racer.
Yes, I think.
So the way they use like light and color in that when his Mach 5 is hitting top speeds is almost like he goes into like a light tunnel. It made me think of that actually. But you're absolutely right. That was the standout moment. It was amazing. But there were some other shots as well, like the shot from underneath Sintet and Vel as they were using their little water scuba to go through the water. Looks absolutely beautiful as well. And I thought the cinematography of them scaling down the dam was fantastic. The shot of all the Darnies coming through the valley was beautiful. It looks, you're right to say this looks cinematic because it does.
It feels like there's elements of so many different films that we've seen growing up that have been thrown in there. That scene going down the dam, it's like something out of Mission Impossible. The scene them swimming through the dam is like something out of which was just been done on the VHS Jaws. Looking underneath and kind of seeing them going along, which you could probably say maybe they're doing a bit of fan service to kind of get people seeing certain scenes and relating them back to something else, and it really brings something out of them. But it's cleverly done, and it don't feel forced. It feels like that should be there, and it's just clever little moments that they've done. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they called themselves Echo Team, so I mean, if you're talking about fan service callbacks, to be calling themselves Echo Team. Well, we know obviously like Echo is something that's been used previously in the franchise.
Yeah.
When it's on the nose, it's all right. And then sometimes it's subtle and that's good too. We don't mind either way.
I would question actually one thing about Skeen saying Tamara is a stormtrooper. Because he can shoot and stormtroopers can't. So,
very good point, yeah.
Which, I mean, that was actually one thing that was a bit of a disappointment when they get chased by the TIE fighters, that they went down very easily, very quickly.
Well, I guess that's what Nemec had used his machine to work out that, and he'd worked out the pattern of the I think storm, hadn't he? So
yeah, he said that they won't be able to target him. I think in one of the previous ones, which again that harks back to what probably a lot of people have just seen in the cinema of Top Gun.
Sure.
Again, the tag is, I mean, in fact, even go back to the original Star Wars when Luke can't target.
And the trench run, yeah.
It'd be nice if they explain why there's an exhaust port.
It'd be great if they brought that, wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, they are in that armoured carrier, aren't they? So I guess that's part of it as well, isn't it? So the TIE fighters are much more vulnerable, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the armoured carrier, it's there to transport the money, so it's going to be able to take some impact. But yeah, I mean, he did kind of feel that these guys are going to get taken out because, I mean, the armoured carrier hasn't got anything to take them out with. So
yeah, sure.
But the fact that we see them, and again, it's certain little noises you hear that, hearing them TIE fighters.
Yeah, we had it with the speeder bike 2 weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah. It it pulls on them certain things of people who've grown up watching Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and those who are getting into it, that you think, I know what this is. So it's the I can't even say it now. It gives you that kind of, where this is. You can feel it, and that, and it's nice that they do that.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Certain noises like the lightsaber buzz, the TIE fighter whine, that speeder bike hum, all of those things, absolutely just brings you right back, doesn't it? I quite liked the fact that the TIE fighters were taken out by the natural phenomena, because again, it kind of felt like, is the Force involved, or like it's kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, how we, like Mother Nature will reset, we say, don't we? This idea of like, kind of something is helping the rebels to escape, and not necessarily taking them out, the TIE fighters out, taking the Empire out, but that sense of like, a good will prevail and evil will get stopped. And then you were cutting back to the Darnies watching, and there were tears running down their eyes, and they were enjoying the phenomena. But there was, because of the intercutting with the editing, partly it was almost like you're watching them seeing the rebels escape and the Empire being defeated, and that's what they were happy about. So again, there was clever levels of storytelling going on there.
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of build this up. It's a spiritual kind of thing that they come along to see. And whether it is a case that they're seeing, the rebels escaping and the Empire getting taken out, or whether it's just the fact that this means so much to them, and the fact that they've been able to get there and do this. And I'm sure they'll never go back to this, but, we believe now, hopefully, that they will do this for years to come. And, they won't dwindling in numbers. They'll probably go back to the old days of where there's thousands of Darnies there, being able to enjoy this every few years. But, it is that cleverness of, you do feel the fact that there's something else driving them forward. But, I mean, then, as I said, they end up going to the Doctor, and then we see the whole thing with Scheme, which I wouldn't say I was shocked when he tried to double cross him. Because he did kind of say that he was in prison. So you kind of, I won't say I expected it as such, but, I think it was clever way of being able to kind of get rid of him as well.
Yeah.
But again, showing that growth in Andor, in Cassian, to do the right thing in a way. And again, he goes in there and he talks about Velnies. He just wants his money. He just wants his money. He even says that he's going to buy the ship off the Doctor.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
It's not like he's trying to shoot the Doctor or anything. He's a good guy. And that.
Well, he's just in probably his friend he's just made, the closest person he grew closest to, get crushed by capitalism. So perhaps he's realised money is not the way. And that was a very. I thought it was clever, because I think we all expected Nemec to get shot, or, as Dave said, to get moused, to get absolutely annihilated. But actually, what he got was a really kind of tragic end, in that they'd succeeded, and then money, capitalism, even in success, there's defeat, and he gets crushed, doesn't it? It's quite tragic, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lovely part, the fact that when the guard goes to attack Cassian, and Nemec saves him.
Yeah, good. I've got that. Good point. Yeah, he's getting choked out, isn't he, Cassian?
Yeah, he's getting choked out. He's trying to reach for the blast, so he turns a certain way. Nemec shoots him, and it gives him that chance to be able to, get them going. And even though Nemec gets crushed, you still feel he gets that hero's ending, because, I said at the start, I really felt for him when he's kind of putting in the coordinates, to give Cassian, and that kind of climb, do this, and then dive, and then telling him where to go, and you really felt that he's fighting to keep to be able to get them to safety, knowing probably full well that he's done for. And I think it was a very much telling moment. And the bit where the doctor then covers him up, and you just think, I knew he was going to die, or I definitely felt he was going to die, but it still hits home, the fact that he did. And again, that will probably, be the thing that pushes Cassian on now.
Yeah.
To wherever he goes next.
There was something that jumped into my head whilst I was watching, and I debated with myself before we start recording whether to bring it up. But now we're here about like how the fact that Nemec didn't make it. So 7 of them go in for the the Inglorious mission, right? Gorn gets shot, Tamarin gets shot, and Cinta gets left behind.
Yeah.
Cassian, Nemec, Skeen, and Vel escape. Like ostensibly, right? So 4 escape, 3 get left behind. And it just jumped out to me that 4 white people escape and 3 people of colour either die or get left behind. And I couldn't decide whether that was just... I'm not trying to make a criticism. I wondered, like, there's so much in this episode that is about colonization. And it's very clear that's what this is about, and about how Native Americans were treated and how they were forced out of their own homes and cultures. And what you were saying before about like this clever idea that the Empire had. Well, of course, that we know that's how Native Americans were treated, that they were tricked through alcohol and gambling and all these kind of things. So, I'm not an authority on this, but my limited knowledge. So it felt like, again, was that another subtle layer of commentary in that if you're a person of colour, you're either abandoned or you're kind of the cannon fodder, or they've all had earlier said like, no, Cassian, you go first. You're our point man. She was more than happy to sacrifice him. I don't know. It really jumped out to me as being, everyone is so conscious of it, and rightly so, conscious of characterization and the old adage of, like, if you're if you're a person of color in a horror movie, you're going to die first, and all these kind of ideas of not trying to adhere to these tropes which are dated. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's maybe it is kind of them showing that, I think if that's what they was trying to do, I think really they probably would have been better off showing it the different way and showing that, a person of colour can get away and that. But it's interesting. I saw a thing about this young lad trying to do a college tutor up in America about Christopher Columbus, and saying about, that he said he was going to bring slaves back and he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And the guy kind of just completely shut him down. Says he said what he had to say to be able to go out there and explore the world. And slavery is bad, and things like that are awful. But that's where we need to learn from, and that's where we need to build from. It's one of those things where, I mean, again, we're never probably. I don't think we're ever going to go back there. I don't think. I mean, it'd be interesting if Vel does go back for Cinta and that, but I think that's something they'd already accepted. That something that that's why it was such a hard decision for us to call it, knowing that people are going to get left behind. Again, it's hard to know. Is this something that is it just a coincidence, or is this something that is a bit clever writing that they're just trying to show that these things are still out there?
I think if it's coincidence, it's undoing some of the good writing we've been speaking about. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that I believe that it's there purposefully, and it's something that we'll all become much more culturally aware of. Representation in media is massively important, and I just thought to have these characters, and we've mentioned maybe Skeen allowed Tamarin to get shot, and there's a lot we could read into that too. As you said, like, you kind of suspected Skeen was bad. Well, I mean, names are important, right, in storytelling. Skeen sounds like a bad guy, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So we can probably read it. We probably could have read that into it from the start. So yeah, like, I'd like to give them the benefit of that. I think like there's some other storytelling and there's some other avenues that people can decide to take this if they want to.
I mean, the writing has been fantastic. You know, we mentioned before about there's certain things we would say the Empire is very much like Hitler trying to take over.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you kind of feel that the writing probably is. It is there, so doing, you know, the social commentary of, look, you know, we need to look at ourselves. You know, it's a clever way of doing it using Star Wars or whatever kind of, you know, we've got it with Captain America and having, you know, Sam Wilson now being the new Captain America. It's a clever way of kind of making people see these things without maybe realizing that they're seeing it. And then it then sparks conversation, which is, you know, it's what we need. It's what, you know, we need people to have these conversations, and some of them are a bit uncomfortable. You know, it sometimes it's hard when you're not the minority or you're not the people to kind of feel that you can give a comment on it. But if we don't do that, then we can't grow and we can't become, you know, a better version of ourselves.
Yeah, it jolted me up the episode for a few seconds. And then it was only as I was stewing on it and thinking about, you know, what we were going to talk about today. And I was just like, yeah, I'll say it one more time. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if it's there to be read, I think somebody far smarter and far more versed in this world than me would have a lot to say about it. I think there's probably some deep stuff going on there, which is worthy of commentary. Hopefully somebody will write an essay about it, and I would love to read it. If Rhea was here, I think she'd have a lot to say too.
Yeah.
All right, so they escape. Andor is off on his next adventure. There probably is a plan for getting Cinta off planet. I agree with that. But there was a risk of her having to walk out, wasn't there, and being caught or shot or whatever. But I think you're right. I don't think we'll see these people again. I think they're done. I think they're out. Much like the character from the first arc on the first few episodes on planet. I can't think what her name was now. That was Andor's, you know, like the mechanic, Andor's friend on the first few episodes.
Oh, right, yes. I can't remember what she'll call it.
No, me neither. I don't think she'll be back. I think, you know, when those arcs are done, we're moving on.
Bix.
I'll say
it. Yeah. I can't remember. I'm trying to look at IMDb and I can't remember. But yeah, I think it probably is a case of this was the story. This is what we've told. This is what we've done. Let's move on. Again, it would be nice to know that Val goes back for Cinta, but is it necessary? Do we really need that? It depends what they do with Val next. You know, is that it for Val? Maybe Val kind of goes and...
I don't think we'll see her again. She'll be out in the world doing something, but I don't think she'll be in Andor's world, so we won't see her.
The thing is, we don't actually know what we're going to do with the money as such. It was never actually said, you're going to deliver it here or you're going to do this. It was just a case of steal the money. Yeah,
he didn't need to know that part of the plan, did he?
You know, I suppose if we are seeing this through Andor's eyes, in a way that's not important what the next part of the story is going to be. And that, I mean, it's going back to the previous episode and that it was nice that we saw Silo there. I was a bit worried that we wouldn't see him again. And the fact that we did, and something else is probably going to come from there, and that maybe we will see these characters again, but maybe just to kind of tie a quick bow off, you know.
I think Cyril's a shoo-in, isn't he? We'll definitely see him again. I think he's going to get involved with the ISB, isn't he? Because I can see him and Deirdre teaming up. I think we said that before. I don't think I need to see Val or Cinta again, really, if I'm honest. I don't think I need to see, you're right, Bix again. I think they're interesting characters for the arc they're in, but that part of Andor's story is done. We may see Bix, I suppose, if he goes back to planet to see his mum, but they're not integral to his story anymore. He's moving forward. He has to move forward, as you said, to become the guy we know from Rogue One. He can't be looking back. It's not that sort of journey for him.
No.
So I'm ready to move on and see who's next that he's going to meet.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember Forrest Whitaker's character.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'll be interested when he goes and he interacts with him and kind of, you know, but again, it's when it comes to kind of guessing what's going to come next, I don't we know where it's going to go. How it's going to get there, I just haven't got a clue.
No, you're right. So Saul Guerrero is going to be in it at some point, isn't he? His name came to me whilst you were talking. So you've got no predictions at all? You've got some in Maff up your sleeve. Come on, you've got something in there.
I think obviously he's going to go off and try and find his sister.
Sure.
You know, that's his driving point now. I can't remember where they left because I don't think he's really got any leads on that, has it?
No.
So I suppose this case he's going to be chasing up these things. This is whether he's going to go back to Luthen. You know, he seems to be someone who has his fingers in many pies.
You think he'd keep the medallion, though, wouldn't you, if he was going to go back to Luthen? And he gave it to Elle, didn't he?
Gave it back and told her to give it back to your friend, didn't he? So, yeah, I suppose he won't go.
I think he's
cutting.
In his mind, he's cutting ties there for now, isn't he?
Yeah, I've done this. Yeah, I guess so. So, I'll scrap that idea.
Sorry about that.
But I think that's one of the most interesting things because we don't know where he's going to go. We're going there with him, and I guess he doesn't know what he's doing. So why should we? Yeah,
fair enough. So let's talk about our three endings then, and see if what we think of any of those. So we get Mon Mothma in the Senate, don't we? And she's talking about this genocide. What I haven't got, unfortunately, and again, Mike, step in and inform everybody next week. She's talking about a genocide which I think is quite famous within Star Wars canon and Star Wars lore, and is one of the chief reasons why she ends up kind of leaving the Senate, because they're not dealing with it in the way that she wants them to. So we see her delivering this kind of speech, and everyone being distracted by their iPads, essentially, their space iPads, which is the news of this robbery. So it has, it's hit the Hollow Net, I think they call it, or the Hollow News or something. So it's hit quite big within the galaxy.
The interesting thing there as well is before, as she starts talking, before they're all looking on the iPads and the Chromebooks or whatever, it's quite empty already.
Yeah.
And which makes me think maybe she doesn't hold as much pull.
Oh, yeah, agreed.
She did.
Yeah. I think we got that in the episode when she was talking with her husband about the fact, like, these people don't support me. Like, why are you inviting them to dinner? And agreed.
Yeah. So you feel that she is just talking to a bit of an empty room.
Yeah.
Which might lead on to why maybe she does step away. You know, because we don't know how Mon Mothma gets to where she is.
No. And we do know that eventually Sidious, the Emperor, Palpatine, does dissolve the Senate, don't we? She leaves before that point, obviously. But we know that's coming in the future too. I agree. I think she's probably going to we're going to see her slow disillusionment with the system and the process, which of course started off in the prequels, to be fair. You know, this is how democracy ends, isn't it? I think is the line, with a round of applause or something, which Padme says. I've totally butchered that and paraphrased it, but it's something along those lines. Yeah, I agree. I think, and it's like you see this footage of the House of Commons, and it's like, you know, when it's about starving children and there's 10 MPs in there, and when it's about whether they're going to get their pay rise, they all fucking turn up and they're all sitting. It's exactly like the real world. I think it was a very, again, another very clever, subtle moment that's making a commentary about the world we currently live in.
Yeah, it is. It's that case of, you know, this is important. People are dying here. We could do something about this. You know, we need to. There's no one here.
Yeah, no, it doesn't directly affect these people in the room, so they don't give a shit.
No one cares. And whereas, like you say, if it had been the case of we're going to lose, you know, thousands of pounds, everyone would have been there going, no, we don't.
Well, look how much they rush off when they see that whatever it is, 18 million credits or something has been taken. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, you know, that's going to affect them, I suppose. So it's a case of where's that money gone? What's happened? What, you know, how could this happen?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that telling thing again. It's them nice underlying little stories of kind of pointing out, but for people to have these conversations of saying, look, we really should care more about these things than these things. You know, money is a fantastic thing and everybody needs it, but it's not the most important thing. And if it was used in the right way, yes, it really could be, but it never is. And that, but you know, it is that commentary of there of, you know, she's preaching the greater good and no one's listening.
Yeah, agreed. So we cut from her, don't we, to the ISB, I think, comes next. And there's the emergency meeting being called because they're holding a meeting for the emergency retaliation plan, which sounds very, very ominous. Each sector of the galaxy has been called in, haven't they?
Yeah.
To discuss how they're going to stop this kind of event happening anywhere else in the future.
Yeah, which I've forgotten her name now.
Oh, Deirdre.
She didn't look. She's obviously she's seen this.
She saw it coming.
She didn't look surprised. She looked a little bit more like a kind of, you know, when you get I told you so.
Absolutely. Well, she has been telling them so, hasn't she? And they've been ignoring her.
Which you see, this could push her career on a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, it's quite ominous of, you know, how are they going to retaliate? You know,
yeah, it's that word, isn't it?
What are they going to do? Yes, it was a heist, it was a bank robbery, but the way I suppose, going back to the previous episode, the previous episode I was on, when they said we're here to stamp out the disease, and it kind of arcs back to that where you know, we deal with this now so that it doesn't become something more, something greater.
And also, they were quite dismissive. You know, these people, they're not really up to much. Don't worry about it. Now suddenly they've got full attention. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
which you could get that sense from the room of everybody, like, you know, what's going on? You know, how has this happened? And very much kind of put down the fact that no one's leaving until we know what's happened.
Absolutely, yeah. And how we'll deal with this. Yeah, that's the key thing, isn't it? Like, yeah, how we're gonna deal with that. I like how you put that. Yeah, and then we get the nice little scene, don't we, with Luthen?
Yeah,
having a little jig in the back room.
It's funny because it made me go back to when Luthen put his disguise on. He did that flourish. It was kind of the same, but this one had meaning. This one, you felt he actually meant it this time. Whereas the other one kind of, you saw him do the flourish and then he kind of looked sad afterwards, like, oh. Whereas this one, it was that joy of, we've done it. We've started this. Which, I mean, it arcs back to something Andor said early on in the episode, that be careful what you wish for. When he was saying to them,
"Oh, yes, you'll sleep when this is over," doesn't he, or something like that?
Yeah, he says you'll sleep, and he says, you know, this is going to start. This is going to build something, and this is like, just be careful what you wish for. Which again, it shows Andor is very much grey. He's very much in between, kind of where he needs to be. Nemik is very much the kind of freedom fighter who's, you know, they mentioned that this wouldn't have happened without Nemik, which makes, when we first meet him, you think he's just this young, naive, you know, person. But as these 3 episodes went on, you realise that he designed this. He designed the plan, kind of thing. He was the driving force behind it.
Yeah.
What's written in that ledger is going to be quite interesting, because I think we probably will see in the next episode Cassian sitting and reading that, and probably that's going to kind of push him into the person that we know he's going to be.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll find out in a week's time.
Yeah, only a week.
Yeah, and Mike will sweep in to hopefully drop some knowledge bombs on us again and fill in some of the gaps of these things which we know but don't quite know, such as that race of people who are in this genocidal that Mon Mothma was talking about. Mike will fill you in next week. Or Google's always your friend, isn't it?
There's probably a good comic book about it all to explain it all.
I'm sure there is, yeah.
He's got it on an ebook and also hardback. And that. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We're sitting here and we're probably like an average Star Wars fan who knows certain bits and we kind of fill in bits in. And then, as I say, you get the next level. And then there's Mike above that. As I say, it's nice to kind of, as you learn a lot more about this universe. And I said in the previous one I was on that I didn't realise there was as many stories out there as what there is. And just touching little bits here and there about them may give us a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll lead on to something else.
It's the spark that lights the fire, after all.
Yeah.
And Andy will be on soon as well, I believe, and he's another big Star Wars guru. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he's bringing to the table, because I know he's been watching the show and he's been really enjoying it too. So he's going to be another powerful voice, I think, on this podcast when he comes on. Anything we haven't covered, my friend, that you feel we need to go back onto?
No, I think that's pretty much what I'd written down.
We flitted around all over the episode, but we've managed to cover all the key points, I think, at some point.
I mean, if I don't know who edits this, if they want to try to rearrange our conversation and put it in an order, that's absolutely. But, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's nice, I mean, being able to sit and, I mean, listening to the podcast, a great. I do often sit whilst I'm working in the morning. I'm listening along and I'm kind of chatting to myself, kind of thinking this. Being able to come and actually say it, it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. And you're part of the community now, so you're going to be coming back and back and back. May not be for Star Wars. We'll find plenty of other spaces for you to fit in.
Yeah, a lot of fun this is.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Maff. Thank you very much for that. I really enjoyed that, because I think what we've managed to do is talk about all the things that are on the surface, but then we've been managing to delve down underneath for the arc for Andor, and thinking about all the kind of meshing that perhaps may be going on underneath it too. So I think we've really managed to hit a lot of the key points today.
Yep.
I hope everyone's enjoyed it. As I said, Mike will be back next week covering episode 7, to be discovered whether that is a standalone or whether that's the start of a new arc. He'll have another new guest for that show. And then I'll be back the week after to discuss episode 8. I get all the evens. We'll see what that means as we go forward. I feel like I've been pretty lucky so far with what I've had, so hopefully long may that run continue. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See you soon.
Please take care. Explicit by Drake, featuring Rihanna.
Can you hear my Alexa in the background?
Yeah.